Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are watching Off the Track, and it is time to drop the hammer.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to episode number 7 of Off the Track. I'm your host, Tanner Holmes, and you can immediately tell we're in a little bit of a different setting here. I got my co-host, Bennett Gooch. Bennett, what are you up to today?
We just shot a phenomenal episode, super long, but I'll tell you what, it is action-packed from the very beginning all the way to the end. Some of the greatest stories I've just now learned about our guest, and I'm sure you enjoyed them just as much.
Oh, absolutely. This episode is action-packed. It's full. It's a bunch of great content. You guys are going to stay tuned. It's probably close to 2 hours in length. We're shooting the intro after we shot the episode. But like I said, we're in a little bit of a different setting here. We're actually in our guest's office. Jimmy Elledge, my car owner, former NASCAR crew chief, and owner of QRC Karts. So we're going to talk about a bunch of different things today. Like Bennett said, both of us learned a bunch of things that we did not know about, and just got to hear a lot of great stories about the Glory Days of NASCAR and how Jimmy played his role in that. Jimmy taking over QRC Karts and buying that, and
elevating it,
building up the house team, and then also the relationship that him and I have as driver, car owner, and great friends. So we're going to jump in here to episode number 7. Like I said, a great interview. If you guys want to check out our clips channel, we are going to be posting all the different segments, maybe a 5-minute portion or 10-minute portion from different stories that Jimmy brings up and talks about. So that'll be linked in the description down below. Also, you can listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as usual. Anyway, let's just jump right into the episode. So joining us here today on episode number 7 of Off the Track, we have the owner of QRC Karts, former NASCAR Cup crew chief, and the owner of the Outlaw kart that I drive every single week at the Red Bluff Outlaws, the AT&T, Jimmy Elledge. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Make it sound like I've got some accomplishments or something.
You might.
Yeah, we are talking to a pretty big-time guy here. Like I said, you own my Outlaw card and everything. First off, who is Jimmy Elledge in QRC Karts? I think it'd be great to talk about that before we really dive into your timeline of your career.
Sure. No, QRC Karts is, was obviously started by the Carroll family in 1985, and about 2012, he contacted me and asked me if there was any interest in maybe coming and purchasing the company. I was kind of towards the end of my NASCAR career to where I was not that excited about what I was doing anymore, and was kind of wondering what was going to be next. And I remember when I got that phone call, I was very energized about it, because it was something that I was passionate about from doing it when I was younger and racing them. And just to kind of complete the circle, we were kind of piddling with some go-kart stuff about that time, and Carson and Kennedy were starting to do some racing, so it just kind of seemed like it was the right thing to do. And it's been wonderful. The relationships that we've been able to form, with like you guys, and with the Holmes family, and the Brookses, and the Seavies, and just all the cool things that I've been able to do outside of in my second career, I would call it. It's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I think first, now that everyone knows a little bit about you, I want to talk about Red Bluff before we kind of get into how you got started there and everything, to give the viewers some context. In our previous episode with Kyler Shaw, he videos the Red Bluff Outlaws, and it's interesting for the fans to hear a different take from someone else, because we always talk about Red Bluff and they hear it straight from us, the history of it, but someone who's been there the most almost.
Since the third race.
Yes.
He was there, the third ever race started there. So
been around for a long time. Can you tell us just a little bit about the Red Bluff Outlaws and really what that place means to dirt track racing here along the West Coast, and kind of being a starting ground for these young kids coming up?
The place, from obviously I ran the third race that they ever ran. We still all pitted inside the building.
Yeah.
And the track was in there.
That's crazy.
And, the competitiveness that it's had that since then. There were some growing pains the first couple of years of trying to sort out the racetrack where it didn't have too many holes and was somewhat raceable.
Yeah.
And it grew quickly. But the competitiveness, I feel like it's something about that building and something about that place, but it's always been super hard and super competitive. The funny story is my very first race, we had watched and we had purchased, a car and was getting ready to go race down there, and we raced, and, we were done. I was in what they called the 4-cycle senior class or junior class at the time, and we were done, earlier than when the opens were. And my dad wasn't really interested in sticking around till the end of the night. So we left and we went down the road to where the Paint Mart is, just past Bud's Jelly Cone. And that was actually a pizza parlor. And we were there eating pizza, and then like fire trucks and police cars and all kinds of chaos was just ripping down the road. And we were just sitting there kind of wondering what was happening. And about 30 minutes later, some people came in from the racetrack, and they're like, "Man, did you see that? That was crazy." And, we were obviously eating pizza, getting ready to go home. And what had ended up happening was two guys got into it.
Yeah.
One guy flipped over. Another guy's crew member went out on the racetrack with a can of gas and lit his car on fire while they were at the start-finish line, while they were in the
This is the third race?
Yeah. The two drivers were like fighting down in turn one.
Yeah.
And the crew guy came out and just dumped gas on the guy's car and lit it on fire right in the middle of the front stretch. So basically what the point is not a lot's changed over the years.
Yeah.
And the competitiveness is still, the desire to win, and how, what it brings out in you is still pretty much the same from 1984 in race number 3.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. I think that's the second story I've ever heard where the pit crew guys rush the wall or go over the wall onto the track. Because I think you might remember this West Coast Nationals, like maybe 5 years ago.
Fighting,
They went and flipped the guy's cart over in turn 2. Yeah, so that's crazy.
You talked a little bit about early getting started. Can you give us some background on your dad and how much a part of you getting started in racing that was, being here in Red Bluff, and how he was a part of racing?
Sure. My dad was raised on a farm in Susanville, California, and just was always interested in cars, and that was totally different from what, his family did with ranching and stuff like that. But he got involved in cars and built drag racing cars and, built engines and stuff like that. And then ended up moving to Anderson and worked at the sawmill and was doing porting cylinder heads on the side. And, that kind of progressed along. And he actually ended up being an engine builder for Bill Schmidt, which was like was probably the biggest West Coast team there was. And then got recognized by when the East Coast cars and the West Coast cars raced together at like Phoenix and Ontario and Riverside. They were East-West races. He got kind of recognized by some of his engines being standouts, and that led him to working for Benny Parsons in, I think, the late 70s, early 80s, like 79, 80-ish. And, man, that was like, if you had a $200,000 budget in NASCAR, man, you were big time. I mean, they didn't even have haulers yet. They still had like a box truck and a flat trailer and like 4 or 5 cars. And, that led to, him going to work for Petty Enterprises and being part of that. And he was actually part of the controversial 198th win with the big engine. That was his.
Oh, really?
At Charlotte, yeah. And then he kind of took a break from all that because the teams weren't funded well enough and the job market wasn't, the teams would go out of business a lot.
Yeah.
And there wasn't, but like, maybe Junior Johnson's team or Richard Childress's team or Richard Petty's team. Those were the only ones that really had solid funding, and that wasn't great. It was good, but it wasn't great.
Yeah.
So, we kind of moved around a lot, and the teams weren't centrally located in Mooresville like they are now. So we were in Georgia for a while, and then we were in Winston-Salem, North Carolina for a while, and then we were in Charlotte for a little while. And I went to a bunch of different schools, and then finally he just decided that he was going to get out of it, and we were going to come back to California, and he was going to take a job, doing some drafting and some engineering work at this company in Anderson that built some automated furniture equipment, and we were going to go racing. And my sister and I could go to the same schools. Well, we did that, and that's how the Red Bluff thing started in the 80s, and we raced along in that.
How old were you at that time?
13.
13, gotcha. So you were traveling around a lot when you were younger, a lot younger. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's so crazy because, like, the racing, I mean, you literally drove in a van. If you got to go to the races with your dad, you were in the van with the team, and you drove all night home from Michigan and pulled in the parking lot, and my mom would come and get me, and I'd go home and go to sleep, and my dad would go to work, because there wasn't but a handful of people. There wasn't airplanes and all this fancy travel stuff like they have nowadays. But yeah, so then we got racing, and then he was doing some engines. And this is actually kind of a cool story, and I didn't really realize the significance of this until after I became a Cup crew chief myself. Mm-hmm. But somewhere along the lines here, so I kind of got a little messed up on the timeline. So before he went to work for Richard Petty, how he got the job working for Richard Petty was Richard was mad at his engine department. And this is in the height of the King's day.
Legacies, yeah.
So Maurice Petty was his brother, and he was the head engine builder. So Richard didn't like the engines that they had. So Maurice seeked out to different engine manufacturers around the United States that built Cup engines, and they bought random engines from random companies from like 5 different people. Well, my dad's engine ended up going to Michigan and winning the race. And I didn't really think much of it, but like Michigan is like the highest horsepower track that you had to have. I mean, it's
that makes sense.
You have to have power to win there. And like for a guy to build an engine off of Airport Road in Reading and put it in a crate and ship it to Richard Petty's shop and they go win like Michigan, like I didn't understand the significance of that until like later on, and I became a crew chief, and just how difficult Michigan, and it's a 2-mile super speedway, so how difficult that was. And I mean, I always knew my dad was smart and really good on engines, but like I said, once I became a crew chief myself, and our struggles at Michigan were real, and it was like, man, my dad built a motor one time and shipped it out here, and Richard Petty went and won a 500-mile race at Michigan, and that's how he got kind of, pulled back into it at that point in time. But when the Petty Enterprise thing closed, that's when he came home, and we decided we were going to, when I was 13, and get into the outlaw kart stuff, and he went and did a whole different direction. But he was still piddling around with some engine stuff with Tommy Hubert and running at Shasta
A legend
Speedway.
of outlaw karts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so he was, and Craig Rodman, he was doing some stuff for him, and some guy, Vic Blanc, that we raced on the coast. So there was some Southwest Tour stuff. And the open show used to be huge at Anderson.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of that. That was a big race.
Yeah, those were big time.
Yeah.
Run what you brung.
Yeah.
And those were huge races. But so we were messing around doing that kind of stuff, and I was racing, working at Mike's Body Shop with Tom Hubert, Mike Hubert, Stevie Davis, myself. I mean, it was chaos.
At a young age, what was that like racing with your dad? Like, I know now, I mean, you talk to him, he's seems shy, quiet and stuff. Was he like that the same way when you were younger? Like, what was that relationship like racing with your dad?
That's why I build cars. My dad and I have like such totally different approaches to things. He is so methodical and so meticulous and so detailed, and that used to just drive me crazy because he used to just wear me out to like, be perfect, I mean, like to do this and that. And that kind of like created a divide in our relationship early that got me more interested in fabricating and things like that because it was something he didn't do.
Yeah.
He did some, but like I kind of, that was my own thing. I wanted to create my own name off of something I did and not following his footsteps in the engine side of it, which I probably should have followed more into what he did. But, he was ultra competitive. And I mean, he used to, I remember the hand signals, man, the hand signals. If I seen him doing this, I wasn't being smooth enough. And I mean, he'd stand there with his flannel shirt on and his arms crossed, and you could just feel this stare at you every lap, And one of the funniest things was he kept telling me to stay out of the ruts one night. And I kept hitting him. I finally knocked a wheel off, knocked the tire off the bead. And he comes running out with his air tank, and he puts the thing on there and airs his tire up and puts it back on the bead. And I'm sitting there like just terrified of what he might do. And he looks at me and he's like, "Stay out of the GD ruts." And he smacks my helmet, shuts my visor. And luckily the motor's running, so I just pedaled it and drove away.
Yeah.
But no, he's like any parent, I think. I think you get more and more respect for your parents as you get older.
100%.
I've always had a lot of respect for my dad because of the things he's done in engine building. And, I got to have a front row seat for that when he went to Childress's and worked at Childress's, and I worked at RCR, and then he went on to Bill Davis's, and then, the projects that he was involved in. And as I become an adult, obviously talking to head people from General Motors or, becoming friends with Robert Yates or Mark Conquest and those guys, and how much they admired him, and his abilities. It was really neat, and I feel grateful, that of the accomplishments that my dad has been able to create and the things that he taught me. And I definitely did not learn enough from him.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. All right. I was going to say, so that was when you were running karts in a mention here. There's no hot pit. So they would just come on the stretch on the track to just replace it. That's
he
awesome.
just come running out in the middle of the infield where I'm sitting with a flat tire and an air tank and air
Just
it
gun
up.
it up.
That's
And
crazy.
he had a little, like, we had this little hand truck that had a battery and like a car starter on it. And that's how
Yeah.
you started the motor.
Oh, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I remember that.
The old Briggs motors that started that way. Yeah, I fired my thing up and smacked me on the helmet, and I was out of there. But
So you transitioned from the dirt racing thing. How do you end up going asphalt racing and then pretty much towards the direction of NASCAR in that way? How do you go from the Red Bluff Outlaws towards Shasta Speedway, then up east, I guess?
I think like anybody, any young adult, you aspire to be, something. And I obviously wanted to be a race car driver. And I was very, very much a history buff of NASCAR. I had a huge respect for it, probably because of being able to know who Richard Petty was when I was, 12 years old,
Yeah.
and knowing Benny Parsons personally, when my dad worked for him. And so that kind of got me hooked on it. And then, like watching the races over the years, obviously become a Dale Earnhardt fan. Like, how could
Yeah.
you not be?
Yeah.
But, I have had a different respect for NASCAR racing all along. And I had a really hard time with that whenever, you'd hire people and they didn't know who David Pearson was. And I'm like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Man, that guy's
Yeah.
a legend, So different, understanding people's different aspects and admirations for the sport was difficult for me. But yeah, no, getting able to become a team member and then become a crew chief and all that stuff, man, I got lucky. And it was merely because of my dad's positioning, that when he went to work at RCR to do that R&D engine program in 1992, I stayed here because I wanted to be a race car driver. And I was racing opens at Red Bluff and had a stock car and was racing at Anderson a little bit. And in my next step, I was going to the Busch Grand National Series at Hickory Motor Speedway. I was ready to go.
There you go.
But I guess once I went back there for a vacation and then I ended up getting a job, and then I realized like how it's farther than the 3,000 miles apart that you really are.
And what was that first job?
At RCR, I was hired to build an engine dyno for my dad's R&D shop and the engine shop at the 3 shop. So they had 2 different engine rooms, and they were installing these new dynos, and I had some fabrication skills, and they couldn't break anybody free out of their fab shop to do it. So they hired me to do it, and then like after, it was just like supposed to be temporary. Then like after months, I finally told Richard, I'm like, I need to either get a job or go home.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I didn't have a car. Mm-hmm. I was sleeping in my parents' basement, riding to work with my dad every day, going home with my dad, eating dinner with my folks, sleep in the basement, go to work.
And how old are you at the time?
See, I'd have been 21,
Yeah.
22.
That's super cool because I know listening to other people that were kind of in that generation and stuff going, that's just what it was. You would go back east and by any means, it sounds like you just get a job when you could, and then from there you just work your way up.
The glory
Yeah.
days of NASCAR, really.
The more you could do, the more you got to do. You know what I mean? And the more responsibility that you got to have. And if it wasn't for doing that, and then I remember the 1990, must have been 93. So the 93 Daytona 500, when Dale Jarrett won and passed Dale Sr. on the last lap, that was when I was out here packing my stuff to move east full time. But I had been there since like June of 92, working. And so like once I finished those projects in the dyno room, then, of course it's almost wintertime, and they're busy trying to get ready for Daytona. And there was only like 3 people in the fab shop at RCR.
Gotcha.
So that guy ended up getting kind of flushed right into that. And that was when Kirk Shelmerdine retired and Andy Petrie came on board. So I had to wait to see if Andy Petrie would hire me.
Yeah.
And then, I got hired full time, and I moved out there at the beginning of 1993 and was there. Well, I still technically am there. I still have a home there.
Yeah.
But now I'm both coasts.
Yeah. What's it like when a car goes out and win, like part of the team, and then you're back at the shop on a Monday after the race you won? What's it like being at the shop in that kind of atmosphere?
It was a lot of fun. It's obviously relaxed because that's the goal when you leave every week. So, when you come back, it was kind of like you took a little bit of time to enjoy it and absorb it. Mm-hmm. A lot of times, like the victory dinners or the victory luncheons and stuff would happen like a week or 2 later.
Oh, gotcha.
For it, because it wasn't, you had to get to the next
The
event,
next race, yeah.
So you're flying home or driving home from wherever that was, and Monday is unload and get cars tore apart, and get Tuesday it's get the other cars ready and finished up and loaded up, and the truck heads out Wednesday and you head out Thursday. So you got a short window, but I got very lucky, I feel like, to have learned how to win and be on a winning team, the first team that I worked for. To go to work at RCR in 1992, and be there until 1998. There was a lot of races won and a lot of championships won, and I got to learn from a group of people that, had been there with the 3-car through it all. There was a very tight-knit group of people that had worked together for years. And if I hadn't have been able to learn from the likes of Cecil Gordon and David Smith and Will Lynn and Chocolate Myers and, all those guys as a group, they taught me to think about things that I would have never thought about. It was, you're going there to win a race, but, the approach to win the race was, Will used to tell us all the time, it's like, don't create mistakes. Just make sure your job is done correctly, and Dale Earnhardt will handle the rest.
Yeah.
Give him the opportunity to do his job, because he'll do it.
Yeah, Dale.
And so I was on the road for a little while, or I went on the road. I couldn't wait to be on the road full time with a 3-car, right? So the first opportunity that came up, man, it was like, I'm in. Let's go.
Yeah.
And so in 1993, I started on the road, 94 full time on the road, and I took Will Lynn's spot, who was the guy who did all the brakes and suspension work, and he was a rear tire changer. And he was coming off the road after a 25-year run of stretch, and he wanted to stay home. And I was working with him prior to that. Like, I was doing his, helping. I was his assistant at the shop, and then we just kind of reversed roles. We ended up doing it together, but I ended up taking the responsibilities he had on the road.
In that span of 6 or 7 years, what were like some of the highlights working on the 3-car? I mean, obviously working with Dale Sr. in that group. That's a pretty elite group in NASCAR during that time.
Those guys are hardcore. I mean, you can't walk in there and be a smart aleck California kid like I was.
Yeah.
Knew everything. Didn't need to be told nothing.
Yeah.
And man, they beat you right in shape quick. I mean, those guys didn't win all those races by accident. I mean, you weren't going to mentally beat them up, and you weren't going to go in there and have some bad attitude. You were going to do it the way they wanted you to do it.
Yeah.
And you were going to fit in with them. And that took a little while. And there was some rough times. I mean, I'm grateful for it. But, I mean, there was a couple times, I mean, I was hiding behind the hauler crying like, man, what did I do? These guys are hard asses. I got to find something else. But, just being able to be a part of that, was something, but it was definitely something you had to earn. It wasn't just like, okay, you're in and you're going to do it how you want it. It was, no, you're going to do it the way we want it done, and you're going to do it how we want it done. But like I said, to be able to know all those people, and have had the opportunity to work with them, obviously, the first, one of the first wins and first championships that, I was a part of. And then obviously being at a racetrack one time, when you want to race and go to victory lane, that's like, wow, that's pretty cool. But it's the thing that I probably regret the most is I remember when there was a team meeting and there'd be 20 people or 30 people. And Richard used to tell us all the time how we were making history. He's like, man, you boys are making history. You're making history. And, I remember the 3 guys that I worked with in the fab shop, we'd all be sitting together and we're like, what's he talking about, man? We're not making history. We're just having fun. And we were having fun, but like didn't probably realize and absorb as much of the history that we were in the middle of when it was happening. But it was special times. I mean, it was obviously the times when I'm growing up and transitioning into being an adult and, living on my own and buying a house and buying vehicles and stuff like that and living life, But it was definitely, I am very fortunate to have had those opportunities and to have met the people that I met, because I don't think that any of the rest of the successes that I've had in any form of motorsports, it was shaped by those early days.
Do you have like a standout moment you might recall
or a big race that you guys won?
I mean, they're all big, but I mean, I think that like, the first race that I was a part of winning was Darlington. And, like Darlington was a pretty unique racetrack, and I went there and, got to go on a Sunday, ride with the guys and go have a crew shirt and be there and to be a part of a victory lane celebration. I didn't feel like real comfortable because I was still like young and new to the team, so I didn't feel like I wasn't like right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But like to be able to say, man, I'm on TV and I'm going to Darlington Victory Lane with Dale Earnhardt. Like, how cool is this?
Yeah.
Beyond that, I think the championships, being, championship 5, he had already won 5, but to win 5, 6, and 7, those were neat moments. And 7 by the 7th championship, obviously I was, I feel like very ingrained in the race team and felt like, was a very big contributor, not just riding along, with it by then, but those were really good times. And don't get me wrong, there was rough times. I mean, I remember the years when we didn't win races and Dale Sr. was questioning could he drive anymore, or, all those things. But the thing about him that's so amazing is people don't realize, and you go, well, he sat on a pole at Watkins Glen with a broken sternum and a broken shoulder on a road course. Mm-hmm. And then just refused to get out of the car because he didn't want to get out of the car because, we worked too hard. Like that was his
portion to hold.
Yeah, he's like, man, you guys work way too hard. I'm not getting out. We're leading this race. And it's like, dude, how do you, it's one thing to run a circle track, but like a road course,
turning left and right,
shifting and doing all that stuff. But the desire that guy had to win, was just amazing.
Yeah.
Going from that portion of yours, racing with the 3-car, what's the timeline then look like to becoming a crew chief? And also, what did you have to do to gain all that knowledge to be in that position?
So, like, kind of along the way, I went on the road, like I said, and I was a tire changer, and then I ended up becoming what they called what the car chief position is now. So, I was doing setups, was very involved in pretty much all aspects of it by then because I had worked in the fab shop. I'd worked in the chassis shop, I'd worked in the suspension shop, and then now I'm like doing, assistant crew chief work. And so I was doing that. And then, I don't know, I just kind of got to a point where all of a sudden, like, I didn't want to be on the road no more. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Part of it was, these were the Larry McReynolds days, and I love Larry. Larry is a good personal friend of mine, but it was just so different. From what the days of Kirk Shelmerdine were, the days of Andy Petrie were, and Larry was just completely different direction. Completely different. He and Dale did not mesh whatsoever. I think they both respected each other, but it was a working relationship that it just didn't work. And it was very stressful for me because I felt like I was kind of caught in the crossfire of it, and it's a good thing that I was single and young and stupid because I worked so many hours. And I did a lot of work at night. When Larry wanted to change things, I had just enough experience with all different facets of the car that when he wanted to do all these wild things at, the 11th hour, I would stay and do these things so like the body shop could have the car at 7 o'clock in the morning. And there was days I was there till 2, 3, or 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And I just got burned out with it, and I was like, man, I don't really know if I want to do this. Maybe I want to come off the road, and I was just kind of like, I didn't really know. And then, obviously by being Dale Earnhardt's car chief, you get like at the time, Busch Grand National team or, some of the lower tier teams, they want you. They want
reach out,
to see if, you want to become a crew chief. But me being the idiot that I was, I could have stayed there and probably slid into a crew chief role there, but I didn't feel like I deserved that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I wanted to go like with the worst Busch Grand National team and go see if I could do it.
That would be cool, yeah.
Like help build the team up.
Yeah, not like go be Bobby Labonte's Busch Grand National crew chief and go pick on everybody every week, or Mark Martin or somebody like that I probably could have maybe gotten those jobs if I pursued it. So I went to work for this Busch Grand National team that had 2 kids from Idaho, and they were basically racing off of a trust fund.
Yeah.
So it was a well-financed deal. Neither one of them could drive. And it was torture.
Yeah.
But when I told them I was leaving, we were going to Japan that next day for the Suzuka
race
deal at the end of the year. And I remember getting summons to the front of the airplane by Big E.
Yeah.
And wanting to know like why I was quitting, and he was ridiculing me about like, we're grooming you to be the next guy.
The next guy, yeah.
And I remember looking at him saying, you don't deserve some California kid to be your crew chief. You deserve somebody like equally as good in the crew chiefing field as you are.
Yeah.
I got to go over here and learn the hard ways and learn what I don't know and all this stuff. So I went the hard route and went off Busch Grand National Racing.
Did he like that?
I think he respected it. I don't think he liked it.
Yeah.
He wanted me to stay, and Richard wanted me to stay. And in hindsight, I probably should have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But who knows? Like at the time, I was like, I'm going to go off and
just go for it
and go work with these guys. And we were in Junior Johnson's old shop. So the old shop in Inger Hollow, North Carolina, that the old Budweiser cars and the Tyson, the Cale Yarborough, all of them. Mm-hmm. It was this little old shop. It wasn't that big. It was just like bays, And that was cool because I was working in Junior Johnson's shop, and Junior Johnson's house is right there on the hill right above it, So I did that for a little while, and that was a disaster. Complete disaster.
Yeah.
So I quit, and I got a job with Roush Racing. That's the first year that Mark Martin had left Liberty, North Carolina, where the original Roush cars were. Mm-hmm. And Jeff Burton had started the Roush Racing 99 car in Mooresville. Well, Mark wanted to be in the Mooresville team, not the Liberty team. So they moved to Mooresville. Well, they needed a tire changer. Well, I didn't want to be a tire changer. I wanted to be a crew chief.
Yeah.
So they convinced me to come to work for them for the remainder of that year in 97, I think it was, 96, 97. And be the tire changer on the 6 car. And when the 60 Winn-Dixie car was going to be moved to Mooresville, I was supposed to get to be the crew chief on the Winn-Dixie car for Mark. I'm like, oh, and here, now we're talking.
Yeah.
Now I'm ready to go pick on people. I've already done the hard thing. I don't want to do that. I want to take the easy route. I'll go with Mark Martin.
Yeah.
So I worked there for the rest of that year, and I think that was 97, 98. Yeah, it had to be 97. And that all happened, but I didn't get to be the crew chief.
Yeah.
So somebody else got to be the crew chief, so I was like, all right, I'm out.
Yeah.
Well, at that point in time, Andy Petrie was starting a second team, and Andy and I had history together from the RCR days, and Andy had bought the Skull Bandit team with Kenny Schrader from Leo Jackson. Well, they were going to expand to a 2-car team, and he'd contact me about being the crew chief. Well, they're in Asheville, North Carolina, which is 2 hours west.
Yeah.
So I packed up, and I moved to Asheville, North Carolina, and I had a 20,000 square foot apple packing warehouse. I had a brand new hauler.
Yeah.
And I had, I think, about a $6 million budget.
Wow.
And it was build this team.
Yeah.
Like, build it.
They just gave you all the tools right there.
They're like, here you go for it. So I recruited, actually, like, a lot of people work for me from here, from California. Like, Charlie McDonald came back there. Eric Gannon came back there and worked for me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know many people and didn't have a whole lot of budget money to spend. So, I mean, I needed cheap people that work hard.
Yeah.
So that's when we started that team, which was the Square D 55 car that Kenny Wallace drove. And, eventually that team, we built it into being the team that I won my first cup race with in 2001 with Bobby Hamilton.
Can you touch on that race in particular? I mean, your first and your one and only cup win to win at Talladega.
There's actually a little bit more to that story. So before that, our restrictor plate engines were horrible, you know, and we had this aerodynamic alliance with RCR and DEI. So it was called the RAD program, which was Richard, Andy, and Dale. So we all shared all of our aero information, and we had one central person that controlled all of our aero testing. So we were all very knowledgeable about what each other's cars were. And ours were slow on speedways. And you're looking at all the drag numbers and stuff, and it's like, man, our cars are just terrible.
Yeah.
Slow. We need more motor, So the car owner and I ended up getting into a fierce argument at Daytona on the 4th of July. This is when Kenny was still driving for us in 2000. So we get in an argument. And I cheated. I had done all I could do the first round of qualifying. I could have gotten deep trouble. The edges were pushed very far.
Yeah.
And we qualified 40th or 39th.
Yeah.
Well, at that point in time, you had to qualify again the second day.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you had to choose to stand on your time, but if you got bumped out of the field, you stood on the time you had from the day before.
Right.
So you couldn't change your car from qualifying trim to go practice for race trim because of how deep we were in the field. You had to go out the next day and see how fast the pace was before you claimed. So I'm like, covered up, let's go home.
Yeah.
It's hot, it's 4th of July, it's miserable, let's go. Well, the car owner got mad because he didn't feel like I was doing anything to make the car faster.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, Andy, I cheated as much as I could cheat. And we picked up 3/4 of a second from practice to qualifying.
Yeah.
I can't find another 3/10 and not
Without-
go to jail.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's bad.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, what do you want to do? And I'm like, you got to fix these motors. The motors are horrible.
Yeah.
So we get in an argument. He leaves my motorhome. He goes back to his motorhome, and he got mad, and he called me about an hour later. And all right, we're going to rent a motor from somebody tomorrow.
For the race.
No, for
Oh.
second round qualifying.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
It was 3 days. You qualified Friday. So we qualified Friday night. Second day was practice, and second round qualifying, and the race was Sunday. So the next day they tell me that, well, I think we're going to get a motor from RCR for you. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I don't want no RCR motor.
Yeah.
They're like, well, what do you want? And I'm like, I'm going to call my dad. So my dad was working on the Caterpillar team with Ward Burton. Might have been the MBNA cars. The MBNA car or the Cat car, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
It was the 22 car, Bill Davis. They had really good plate motors. And so I called my dad. I said, hey, Dad, I need a favor. I need a motor. He's like, for what? And I said, we qualified terrible. We're not going to make this race. And Andy and I got in this knockdown, drag-out argument, and they want to give us a motor from RCR, which there was nothing wrong with an RCR engine. The reason we were in this predicament is we had gotten an engine from RCR at Daytona in February, and it was messed up. And they told me that after the fact, but the engine shop and everybody else, well, we gave you an RCR motor and it still didn't run, so it's your fault.
Yeah.
But then the RCR guys, engine guys, called me and said, hey, man, that motor was screwed up. We're sorry, we're not going to charge you for it. But that message never was received within our team. So we were going to get another motor from them, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I don't trust anybody right now but my own flesh and blood.
Yeah.
I need my dad's help.
Yeah.
So we got a motor from my dad. I remember him telling me, stand by. I'll be back with you in a minute. And I'm just kind of hanging out in the garage. Next thing you know, the 22 car pulls out of the garage. They drop the water out of it. They turn it around. They back it in the stall and start pulling the motor. And I'm like, wow, we're going to get the motor, the qualifying motor right out of the 22. And if the cars are dramatically different, how they're plumbed, how this stuff. So this is going to be a disaster.
Yeah.
So we have oil lines that are 3 feet long that you can just coil together and connect the dots. And it was quite the lash up. Yeah. So we get this engine. We put it in, and obviously, you're kind of standing on the ledge. I've put myself out there saying the cars are fine, and you guys, the motor shop is bad.
Right.
Yeah.
So I didn't speak to Andy that whole day. And we were parked right next to each other, and I remember standing on top of the truck the first time that car went out, and I'm like, man, this better be good. Well, we ended up qualifying 6th or 7th on speed the second day with this engine. And then we ended up getting a engine from them for the race. And then after that, they went into an all-out, our 911, our restrictor plate engines are terrible at Andy Petrie Racing. So we had my dad committed to renting us an engine for Talladega.
Uh-huh.
So the last race that year would have been the fall race in Talladega. So we had one of his engines for that race, and that was the race that Dale Sr. won and Kenny Wallace finished second in.
Oh, where they came from the back?
Yeah, at the end of it. So that was my dad's engine in my car, and what we didn't know then would be Dale Sr.'s last win.
Yeah.
And so our engine department had really gotten their act together and had built, got the plate engines a lot better. Well, that same car, we went back to Talladega that following May, the next year with Bobby Hamilton, and won the race.
And that's your dad's engine?
No, it was our own engine.
Oh, okay.
But it was the same car. It was just kind of strange how it was the same car that, and the last time it ran there, it was Dale Earnhardt won, and we were second with this car. It's the same car, our engine, and then a new driver, which we had Bobby Hamilton in 2001. And we ran, I think, 7th in the 500 that year.
Yeah.
So our plate program we were on our way then, and then we got to win Talladega. And the funny thing about winning, not funny, but Bobby Hamilton was probably the most driest personality that you would ever meet. You know? And so we had this really wild qualifying setup, and like we had like 300 pounds of tungsten mounted in the back of the car.
Yeah.
So cars could travel as much as it could. Well, I never would race it, but I always qualified with it, and then we took it all out and like went to like more of a standard setup. Because they had these rules about how much cross weight you could have, and like I had shocks that had stops in them, so you could have like more rounds, but the numbers would read right on the scales, and all this weight piled in the back of the car. And so I had these frame rails welded on the back of the rear clip and covered up with sheet metal, so it looked like a 2x3, and it was really a 3x4, and had tungsten stuck in there and all kinds of wacky stuff. Well,
That's awesome.
Bobby was like, "Why don't we race that?" And I'm like, "Well, I just been scared to try it."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Let's try it."
Yeah.
Okay, well then he tells me the story about sitting at the end of pit road going, "Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy." Like he's terrified going out and getting the draft with it, but like he was the one that gave me the confidence, like, let's just do it. And at that point in time, you used to run a qualifying engine, and you'd take it out after qualifying, and you'd put a practice engine in and practice the 2 practices on Saturday, and then you'd put a brand new engine in and start the race. So we got done with practice, and I remember he was changing his clothes, and he's like, and he wouldn't even look up at me. He's like looking down, and he's like tying his shoes, and he's like, I said, "So that thing's good?" He's like, "Yep." I said, "No issues in the draft, like it doesn't move around?" "Nope." And I'm like, "And you feel comfortable with it?" "Yep." And he goes, "And this practice motor we have isn't as good as the motor we're going to race?" And I'm like, "Nope." And he goes, "All right, we'll be fine." And just walked out.
That's it, yeah.
So we put the other engine in, and at that point in time, Andy had kind of told me, he's like, push the limits as hard as you can push, because,
Go for it.
they're not going to take our first win away.
Yeah.
So, I mean, a speedway car, like, you have to understand, like, the heights are very, very critical. So, like, I mean, we carried this thing through inspection, and they knew most of the tricks, but I mean, we had this thing as on edge as we could get it.
You were playing the gray area.
I was living in the gray,
Yeah.
closer to black.
Yeah.
So I remember we rolled out of this room, and it's just absolute chaos. So after the final deal, you got the sticker on the window, you were ready for the race. So we roll out of the tech room, and you roll out of tech room, and there's another building you rolled through, and there's people everywhere, and there's a line of cars stopped where you had to put the rear shocks on, the mandated rear shocks. So we're standing there in line, and I'm looking around, and there's people all over the place. And I looked at the tech box, and I said, "Give me that ratchet." And the guy handed me the ratchet. So in front of everybody in the whole pit area, I took 2 rounds out of the back of the car, which is already past heights. It's probably already a 1/4 inch low.
You're now
we're like almost 3/8 to a 1/2 inch low before we started the race. So I remember Bobby asking me, he'd be like, "Hey, did you get anything in tech? Did you get anything in tech?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah. Yeah, I got you." So he's like, "You sure you don't want me to climb back there?" Because he used to leave the car covers on, and he'd want to climb back in the back of the car and take rounds out of it, when the cover was on. I'm like, "Dude, I got it in front of everybody, and nobody saw me."
Yeah.
So we started the race, and he comes on the radio, and he's like, "Yeah, water temps this, oil temps that." And he said, "You definitely got it."
Yeah.
And that's all he said, right? And then after the race, he told me, like, he could hear, like, tailpipes hitting the ground and the car bottoming out a lot more where it was. So this ended up being a green flag race, start to finish.
Yeah.
And that car, because of all the engine problems we'd had, like, I mean, I had that thing. It was as good as you could make it for drag. There was no extra, venting for rear end cooling. We had some other stuff figured out where you had fans running instead of pulling air from outside the car, because that's more drag.
Yeah.
And I had this NACA duct in the right side window so far forward in the window to where the NACA duct was only that much exposed, so it would pull air instead of, take air through drag.
Yeah.
Well, it ended up creating a vacuum. Well, it sucked all the guts out of the air conditioner. And the air conditioner quit like on lap 5 or 6.
Yeah.
So the only thing he had was what little bit of air was come through the left side window, and like about cooked him.
Oh, I bet.
But so we ended up winning the race, and at after the race is over, he said he about passed out on the cool down lap because adrenaline hits and all this, and he's got the window down and he got to victory lane. He got out and he was on the ground. I mean, he was drenched wet.
Wow.
But, yeah. Then we were taking photos and Andy says, "Everything gonna be okay in tech?" And I'm like, no, it's not. And I remember you had to go do the victory. You had all these victory lane obligations, and then you had to go up in the tower and you had to do they had a press conference and all this stuff where they had like a wine toast that they did for Unical for the fuel. Mm-hmm. And I remember being up there and I'm looking out the window because I can see the garage down there, right? And so I watched the old 55 car just rolling down there. The guys are pushing it, and I keep sitting against this window and trying to pay attention to this press conference. And I knew if I seen that thing go in and come out the other side, we were good.
Yeah.
But if it didn't, we might be in trouble.
Yeah.
So it rolls in, and I am like, this feels like hours going by,
bet.
and it's just seconds or minutes. And it doesn't come out, and it doesn't come out, and then it backs out of the thing, and I'm
that's not good.
Oh, this ain't good. Then I see the templates come out, which they normally put all the templates away, and all they do is roll and check the roof height.
Yeah.
So they back it out of the stall. Here they come with the template, which I wasn't worried about the template. The template fit it. It was just low.
Yeah.
So they put the template on it, and they put it back in there again, and I never seen it come out because they came out the other side so close to the building, they got it backed into a stall next to it.
Okay.
So I never seen it come out. So I don't think the car come out.
Yeah. So you think it's still in there? Yeah.
I think we're done.
Yeah.
Right? So we get done at the Unical thing, and there was some other thing that you had to do, and I was like, I got to go.
Yeah.
Man, you guys go do this. I got to go. So I get on a golf cart, and I blast back down to the garage area, and I come pulling up the garage, and there it is sitting on jack stands with a hood up, and they're tearing the engine apart. And I'm like, oh, we're golden. I didn't even go to the car. I went straight to the hauler and got me a Bud Light out of the cooler and chugged that thing sitting beside the thing going, man, we just got this win. So I walk over there trying to act like all, hey, man, what's up?
Yeah.
So the head officials are standing there, and he looks at me. He's like, you're in trouble. I said, for what? Playing dumb. And he said, your car owner jumping on the roof of this thing just about cost you the win. That thing was low. And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah. I'm like, dang. Right?
Yeah, playing dumb.
And then they got me the very next week, though.
Oh,
we got to Fontana. It was like they walked up with a template, stuck it on the tail, didn't even put the gauge block under it. They're like, cut the tail off. You guys like, what? We got to cut the tail. I'm like, it's all good, boys. We kind of are getting punished for what nonsense we pulled last week to win the race, but we won, so it's all good.
I think that's probably one of the coolest stories I've ever, because I'm a big nut for hearing all the little ways that people would play the gray areas. And I think that's such a super awesome story to hear that.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So after that, what's the timeline look like towards the end of your NASCAR career? Because that was in 2001, and then you got out of NASCAR in about 2012, right?
Yep.
2012, what were some of the teams you worked for in between and transitioning from where you're at in 2001 on?
So about 2003, I think, is when the Square D sponsorship went away, and we had lost the funding for the second car, and it went down to one car, and then we were losing funding for that. So I had tried to seek opportunities in Mooresville, because that was the only job in town. I had a brief stint at Robert Yates Racing on the UPS car with Dale Jarrett. I went to work there in 2003, in 2002. So after 2001, I went to work at Robert Yates Racing, and I was a crew chief on Dale Jarrett's car. And I only worked there until about April, and I left and I went back to Petrie's. That situation was tough because Todd Parrott had been the crew chief on that car since its inception, and they'd won championships together, and they were trying to kind of get in more of this the mold that Hendrick had kind of created with team managers and crew chiefs and stuff like that. So Robert was trying to push the team in that direction, and Todd really wasn't wanting to do that. He wasn't wanting to be a team manager. He still wanted to be a crew chief. Well, and it just didn't. It was disaster. So I went back to work for the Square D car and finished out that year. And at the end of that season, the team was closing because they were losing sponsorship. So towards the end of that year, Chip Ganassi Racing was starting the Haviland team with Jamie McMurray, and I knew Tony Glover and I knew Andy Graves pretty well. And so I was trying to seek opportunities for my guys, for the people that we had. And so I was working closely with them about getting some of these guys hired. And then I remember at Phoenix, which is the next to last race of 2002, we were talking and Andy goes, well, what are you going to do next year? And I'm like, I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. He goes, well, would you be interested in coming to work for us? And I'm like, well, didn't you hire Donnie Wingo? I was thinking it was all for the 42 car.
Yeah.
And they go, yeah, but we're looking for somebody different for the target car for the 41.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, yeah. So at the time they didn't have a driver. Jimmy Spencer was driving it, but they weren't keeping Jimmy Spencer. So I went and sat down with him and we had a meeting, I think at Phoenix in Chip's bus. And I'm like, well, man, what if you hire, because at the time they didn't know who they were going to get for a driver. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, what if you hire a driver and he doesn't want me?
Yeah.
That's kind of vital. And Tony Glover looked at me. He says, if we get a driver that doesn't want you, we don't want them. So I'm like, all right, sold.
That's great.
Done deal.
Yeah.
So I went to work for Chip Ganassi, and we ended up getting Casey Mears as a driver. And, that turned into being like one of the greatest jobs that I had because it was so randomly put together. I didn't really know what I was going to do. Really didn't even think about it. Didn't care. Mm-hmm. But then you end up getting this job, and it was really neat because the team, had good funding. I thought Target was a cool sponsor. He doesn't want to be associated with a Target brand.
Yeah.
And, they had the Coors Light car with Sterling. They had the Haviland car with Jamie McMurray, and then the 41 car with Casey Mears.
Yeah.
That turned into probably being one of the greatest friendships that I have with a driver still to this day. Mm-hmm. Didn't know Casey from Adams, was obviously a Rick Mears fan. Who's not a Rick Mears fan, and that's Casey's uncle. And, knew who Roger was through his, off-road racing and stuff like that. And it's like, man, well, that's kind of cool. You get to hang out with the Mears family.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, and like I said, that turned out to be such a wonderful friendship of something that was so randomly put together that you would have never guessed.
Yeah.
Now, it had its struggles because Casey basically was thrusted into that position with like one season of bush racing.
Yeah.
And like
Just kind of thrown to the wolves.
Yeah. A couple like pieced together seasons in IRL and some champ car stuff, but like he really had not a lot of racing experience in general. And here he is, a cup driver. Mm-hmm. And all they asked was, they said they didn't care how we performed. They wanted us to continue to make progress, but they had to do a marketing job for Target first and foremost. And they just wanted to see improvement. Mm-hmm. And that was challenging. It was very challenging because, like I said, Casey had not a lot of experience. And like I said, then they say that, but it wasn't, 15 races into it. They're wanting results.
Yeah, they're running results and wins.
We want results now.
Yeah.
And, and it was a fun team to work with, because Jamie and Casey were about the same age. And, Casey and the three crew chiefs was Lee McCall, Donnie Wingo, and myself. Mm-hmm. We all got along really well. Tony Glover and Andy Graves were the team managers, and we all like traveled together, and it was fun.
That's cool.
It was a neat deal to work on. And I worked there so I worked with Casey, and then Jamie left. The Haviland was having some big anniversary, a 25th or 35th anniversary of being involved in racing or something, and Jamie split.
Okay.
So they were trying to figure out who they were going to get to drive that car for the anniversary thing. Well, they ended up putting Casey in it, Mears, and then I got Reed Sorenson.
Yeah. And
Reed was driving our Busch car, the Xfinity car at the time. So I got him, and he was a young, hot rookie, a lot of potential. Mm-hmm. And, the first year was really good with Reed and I. Then Casey left the 42 to go to Hendrick. And then that's when Montoya come along to drive the Haviland car.
Yeah.
And then I still had Reed. And a lot of those deals, man, you get a driver and a crew chief that, you start off and you run really good. Then all of a sudden you don't run good.
Yeah.
It's hard to pull out of that.
100%.
And in NASCAR, it's torture. It can be the end of you, one of you for sure.
Yeah.
And either you figure it out or you don't. And if you don't figure it out, then you're looking for employment.
Yeah.
So, Reed and I weren't performing well. I don't think that we didn't like each other, and we just didn't run good,
right?
And so then rather than fire me, they swapped teams, and so I ended up with Montoya, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I mean, Juan's a professional race car driver, an F1 guy,
A wheelman.
And once again, that's like, I knew who Juan was. I knew about F1. I knew that, and he's a neat guy. He's way more compassionate than people I think give him credit for.
Yeah.
So I worked with Juan for a little while, and then I ended up getting released, and then I went to work for the Red Bull racing team. I actually, after that happened in 2008 when I got fired, I just signed a 5-year contract with them, and they fired me. I'm like,
what the heck?
That doesn't make sense.
Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
I just signed a 5-year contract, and now I'm fired.
Yeah.
Well, I was getting paid. I had just recently gotten separated from my wife. I didn't have a job. I'm thinking, man, it's
not looking too good.
Everything's perfect.
Yeah.
So I was remodeling the house that I had and building a shop, and I just ghosted NASCAR for a little while. I'm like, man, I didn't have good phone service at my house, and that was even better.
Even better, yeah.
So I was back home hanging siding and putting roofs on, and I was getting paid. So I'm like, man, I'm getting paid. I'm good.
Yeah.
But I got to get back into it at some point in time. And then all of a sudden, one day, and I was getting a lot of phone calls, and I had a lot of offers, and I just wasn't ready. I was like, man, I need to reset and be ready to go again. So all of a sudden one day, like, people started showing up from Ganassi's shop at my shop at home. Well, they just laid off everybody.
Oh.
Wow.
Because they had, Dario Franchitti had come to drive the one of the cars, I think the third car or the fourth car we had. I don't remember, because Strimmy was in one, Reed was in one. Yeah, we had 4. Juan was in one, and Dario was in the other. And they didn't end up keeping funding for Dario's car, and like they had this mass layoff of like 40 people, and that was like the first big time thing where, like,
was that around 2009, 2010?
It was 2008.
2008.
Late 2008. And so all these guys start showing up, man. We just got laid off.
Yeah.
They shut down that 4th team, and it's like, it was, whoa.
Yeah.
Man, that's like kind of the first. I mean, there have been teams shut down, but like most of the teams absorbed the people, and they only had a handful. But like when you whack 35 or 40 people at one time, like that was a big deal.
Yeah.
So then I got nervous. I'm like, I better answer the phone, because if I don't answer the phone, I'm just going to be over here putting siding on my house for the next 4 years and getting paid.
Yeah.
Maybe. So, I started looking at all the options that I had, and I was very, very much considering either the MWR program at that time. That was when they, had first gotten going with they had Dale Jarrett there, and they had, Mark Martin, and, the MWR thing was the Toyota deal, and it was going well. So I was talking with them, and then I got contacted by Red Bull. So I pretty much made my mind up after about the first or second meeting that that's what I wanted to do. But they wanted to do it in like a specific timeline, which was fine with me. I'm like, okay, I get like 2 more months off.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, we had to keep it all quiet because Chip Ganassi despised Red Bull Racing.
Yeah.
And if he'd have found out about it, he would have paid for me to sit home rather than me go to work for them. Like, that's how bad it was.
Wow.
Because when Red Bull started up, they kind of, I don't really know if you'd call it not the most correct business moves they made. Like, they took, like, some of our office personnel that, like, took all of the motel reservations and everything that we had, like, blocked out. And, like, you just don't go find a block of rooms for a whole race team. So, like, there were some things that had happened that were probably not necessarily the most etiquette business way of doing it. And I understand his frustrations with him, but I'm like, man, I really want this job because this team is like, man, they're doing well.
Ready, yeah.
Man,
you got good funding, and
it was amazing. So, and I kept telling him, I'm like, look, I'm coming to work for you. You just have to take my word for it. But like, I'd be glad to sign this contract, but I'm still contracted to them. I'm trying to get my release from them before I sign here, but they can't know I need a release to come to work for you because they won't let me come here. I promise you. They'll pay for me to sit on the couch for 4 more years.
Yeah.
So we kind of got that going. Well, all of a sudden, the timeline got elevated a lot quicker. We need you now.
Yeah.
You know, we got to make this change. We got to get you in here, and we got to get this going. So I remember the day that I got released, the Red Bull plane was waiting for me at the airport. I was at Chip Ganassi's office with their attorneys getting my papers signed to be released, and the plane was like, because their shop is at the end of the Concord airport runway, Ganassi's is, and the Red Bull plane is at the Concord airport waiting for me, and they're sitting there thinking I'm like stiffing them. I'm not showing up.
Yeah.
And I'm like trying to get these people moved along to sign
the papers, yeah.
But they found out. And they were like wanting to kind of give me the third degree about, well, we can't release you on this term and that term. And I looked at the lady and I said, can you give me a release as of today at 3:30, whatever time it was? And she said, yeah. I said, then let's get this done. So I got that done, showed up, got on the plane, talked to Jay Fry. He was the general manager. I'm like, hey, all the paperwork's signed. We're good. Everything's golden.
Yeah.
And so we went to Chicago. That was my first race with that team. And we land in Chicago. There's a limo there. They take like all the head department people, and we go to Wrigley Field and go watch the Chicago baseball game. Like, man, I like this. This is the way to roll right here.
Yeah.
But those were fun times. That was a really, really, it was very different because you never seen the owner of Red Bull. We had like this massive budget, and we had like all this. The structure of the team was quite different from the teams that I had worked on before. But it definitely was. It was fun. It was probably the funnest race team I ever worked on.
So that is going to conclude part number 1 of this podcast with my car owner, Jimmy Elledge. If you guys enjoyed hearing him talk a little bit about the Red Bluff Outlaws, his NASCAR career, and much more, please slap a like on this video. And if you'd like to tune in to part number 2, it'll be linked down at the top of the description, or you can check it out up on the YouTube card. Thank you guys so much for watching. Part number 2 will be up next.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are watching Off the Track, and it is time to drop the hammer.